unmute yourself.
Some people would say that I should mute myself. Anyhow, I want to thank everybody for coming to join us and zooming in here today. Hopefully you get something out of this. We have 3 panelists with us to talk about financial literacy. Our first panelist, and if you can give it a wave, Diane Woodward. She's a certified financial planner since 1992. She's the founder and owner of Oak Tree Wealth Management, an independent financial planning and investment firm. Since 1989, she's found it an honor to help families, couples, and newly independent women gain confidence and control over their personal finances through collaborative financial planning. She's lived all over the US, plus Rio de Janeiro, and she's followed her dream to live in the Lake Tahoe area where she currently resides. She attended University of California, Santa Barbara, earning a BS in economics, and she has found her career perfect for herself as it satisfies both her analytical and social sides, and that she loves to help people live better lives. Our second panelist is Arnie Kabilis. Arnie, give us a wave. He's also a certified financial planner and founder and owner of Achievable Wealth, a consulting firm helping people position their finances for success today and into the future. He is also a personal finance counselor with Zyders Enterprises, a Department of Defense contractor that provides financial coaching to service members around the globe. In 2021, Arnie completed a year-long assignment at Marine Corps Base, Hawaii, and is currently at Travis Air Force Base in Fairfield, California. Hawaii to Fairfield. I don't know about that one, Arnie. He's also a member of XY Planning Network and has been quoted in CNN Business, Washington Post, NerdWallet, and Reader's Digest on retirement and military personal financial topics. He received his CFP designation in 2016 and holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in economics from the University of California, Davis. He's married with 3 young adult children and enjoys hiking and walking with family dogs. And of course, he shared the dogs' names, not his children's names, Mocha, Sam, and Marshmallow. I can really appreciate that, Arnie. And last and certainly not least is Betsy Radishatik. Betsy Radishatik-Vogel, is also a certified financial planner and the owner of R&V Personal Finance, LLC, and specializes in the planning needs of female physicians and their families. Although her firm partners with clients across the country, she resides with her spouse and 3 young children in beautiful Decorah, Iowa. Again, nobody references their kids' names. That's why we all have that in common, the 4 of us. My kids would be a lower priority compared to my pets as well. So I want to start off just quickly by way of introduction, even though some of your bios did say a little bit about what you did, but why did you join this industry and what do you find most gratifying about it? I'll start with Betsy this time since she was the last one introduced.
Yes, of course. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. I'll be honest and say that, all those career tests that you take in high school and in college, so you try to figure out what you're supposed to do with your life. Shake your head if you've ever taken one of those. Well, everyone I ever took said I should be a financial advisor. And I said, hogwash. And I thought I knew better. I didn't think it was what I wanted to do. And so I spent some time in food science. I was quality control for the company that makes Spam in Austin, Minnesota. So I did that for a while, and then I changed course and I taught high school personal finance and food science for a while. That wasn't quite it either. So then when my husband was active duty and took me to Travis Air Force Base in California, then that's where I met Arnie and how I came to be with you tonight. But it was there that I went to UC Davis, got my CFP certification, worked on base for a while. And then when my husband left the Air Force and we moved back home to Iowa, I started my own practice. And it is, as I think Diane said, following your dream. It's a perfect fit. Absolutely love what I do.
So just so you know, I took those same exact tests in high school, and they said that I was an underachiever, just like Danny Noonan in Caddyshack. And then the other question I have for you, Spam is from Minnesota. It's not from Hawaii?
It is not. No, they process it in Austin, Minnesota and send it all the way to Hawaii.
Well, being that we're on Hawaii, we'll go to Arnie next. Arnie, let us know why you wanted to be in this industry and what you find most fulfilling.
Let's see. I have a very well, I'll call it my financial planning. My financial industry was probably more of kind of meandering through a career. I started back in 1987 at a small company called Charles Schwab in their back office operations. Somehow finagled my way to getting a securities license. But that path, pretty much, it was more of I guess I was riding alongside some of the major changes that were happening in the financial planning and securities industry. In other words, we went from an industry that was based on products and sold stocks, bonds, mutual funds, what have you, evolved to managing investments, and now involved in terms of now where people are the focus, through the financial planning, just like my colleagues that are with me here as well. So a lot of it, my career, kind of on accident. A lot of it more of trying to find my spot in this investment world, which led me to the financial counseling with the military members, where I met Betsy, and also in the meantime, or as a way to also supplement in terms of starting my own practice, my own business through Achievable Wealth. On a side note, Professor Kabilis, if you notice, is we have the same last name, so she is my wife. Interesting enough, just because of schedules, she has a nicer office than I do, and I'm currently at another office location. But pretty much, it wasn't necessarily by design, but now as I'm finding kind of feet on the ground, really enjoy working with people, really enjoying the business structure that I have. I'm enjoying the ride. So I hope that helps.
So I don't know, Professor Cabela's never referenced you, so I don't know if she's admitting to this marriage thing, but that's a different topic. And as my students can attest, I meander through life and through my classes, so I can fully understand how you meandered through your career. Last and certainly not least on this one, Diane, your bio sort of talks about how you entered the industry and why you do the industry, but give us a little bit of a little bit more detailed color on what you find most fulfilling about the industry and why.
Okay, you can hear me now. I guess, I thought I got my degree in economics. I wanted to get into finance somehow. I thought I wanted to be a stock analyst. And so I went to an investment bank and I worked for an analyst there. And I realized that was all analysis and not much human interaction. My feeling was there were a bunch of lemmings, and so I started in June, right before the '87 crash. So I've been in the industry for a while. Then I tried to start up, and that wasn't my thing. And then I saw an ad for being a financial planner, and I didn't even know what that was. When I got my CFP, they mailed you a box of books, and you sat alone in your living room and you went through them. It was very difficult. But yeah, once I got into it, then the dual sides of it, both helping people and making a real difference. I mean, every time lots of times when I have reviews with clients, they'll just say the nicest things to me. I'm like, oh. And it's really nice. And now that we've gone through COVID, almost all my clients, or maybe all my clients, we do reviews remotely, via Zoom, which has allowed me to move up to the Tahoe area, which was my ultimate goal to be here and live here. So it's a pretty sweet job.
So I'm going to start with something where I think, even though we haven't prepped it, we're going to get some agreement from the three of you. When should a person begin to start paying attention to their financial planning? I'm going to start with Arnie on this one.
Let's see. As soon as you earn your first dollar. In other words, with the financial planning part of, at least what I notice is, with whether you're going through school, you're developing your skill sets, making investments in yourself, and waiting to fully join the workforce, or even if you're in school with regards to your pay, it does help with at least starting to recognize the certain aspects of financial planning. A paycheck is a classic example. When you take a look at your paycheck stub, not you have the top line. Certainly after Uncle Sam and the governor of California, depending on where you're at, takes their cut, all of a sudden you have a little bit lower amount that you need to spend. And so I even begin with that. So in other words, it's not too early to start taking a look at finances. And if you've been in the workforce for quite a while, I certainly say it's not too late to start to take a look at, but also be intentional about your future plans that are there.
So I'm going to ask Diane next, which I'm hoping we get a similar answer since that's what I'm anticipating.
That makes sense. What he said, I agree. I think about, I started with our kids probably about 3 years old, because they would always start in, mommy, I want, mommy, I want. Going to Target was the biggest pain in the neck. So about age 3, we start them on their own allowances, and so they could start to plan their money. Now, as far as I totally agree with him that when you start getting money, start thinking, because time flies and there's always something shiny to buy, but you need to be thoughtful in how you spend the money that you earn.
Betsy?
Yeah, I actually have a story to share that when I was in my first personal finance class, a 200 level course at Iowa State, and my instructor, his name is Doug Borkowski, he said, everybody, even college students, should have savings. And I was mad. I was just astonished that he could suggest that broke college students should have money in savings. After I got over being angry, I realized he was right. That even if it was $10 a week, $20 a month, having a few $100s in reserve gave me the agility to respond to just even small emergencies. Like, I got my car towed and it was $120 at Christmas time. I was in tears because that was my entire Christmas budget. He was right. No matter where you are, having some money set aside is the first step of a financial plan.
I do want to encourage anybody who's attending that if you have a question, I know that between myself, Linda, Liz, and Miriam, we're watching the chat, and we're also watching for hands being raised. So at any point you have any questions, please feel free to get them across to one of us as soon as you are able to articulate it, however you want to articulate it. With that, I'm going to go to Hemant Hussain. I hope I said that correctly.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Michael.
Yes, you said it very well, Michael. Thank you, everyone, for the insights you've provided. I just have a basic clarification question on the differences between wealth management and financial planning. I mean, we see a lot of impetus given the shrinkage in GDP and the rise in inflation, and there's several advice. Is wealth management different from financial planning? Are the practitioners different? Is wealth management primarily for wealthy people, I guess, or is financial planning applies to everyone regardless of your income level?
I'll let Betsy go first. It's her turn.
Okay, well, and the others can certainly chime in. I don't know of a line in the sand that divides financial planning and wealth management, but indeed, those that are wealth managers would cater more to the needs of wealthy, high net worth, high income. But other panelists, is there any kind of agreement in specific differences between those two?
I guess I would say, my company's name is Oak Tree Wealth Management. So that is, holistically taking care of people. What in my mind, I don't know that's a definition of any sort, but in my mind, financial planning is the modeling of the future. Then money management is the managing of the investments. So kind of maybe wealth management is the whole thing, and then underneath it is financial planning and then investment management.
Arnie, do you want to chime in?
Sure. And for me, yes, while I do have wealth as part of my business title, I guess maybe I take a little bit Northern California hippie-ish type attitude towards wealth. And so it's so much, not so much defined about the pure number, but in terms of what is it that you're trying to achieve with your vision, your life, your particular goals, and the money that you may need to fulfill that. And so I think also, so that's kind of the philosophy there. I think a lot of it, and whether unfortunate and unfortunate, is if you notice, there is a lot of marketing when it comes to financial products and financial services. And so you'll have a lot of components saying the wealth manager, and just like Betsy said, a lot of it is geared towards higher net worth where people per se. But given, I mentioned a little bit earlier in my introduction, the changes in our industry, that's where the financial planning part comes into play. Just real quick, before when I started out, if I needed some help, maybe someone would pay attention to me if I had, let's say, 100,000, 200, $250,000, $500,000 to my name. With technology, with the way that now money is pretty much information because of the internet, that whole market expanded where you have practitioners such as myself and both Diane and Betsy here, where the planning becomes paramount. And that means the people become paramount. And there's all different levels of services that are out there, whether it's one-on-one, just like practitioners for ourselves. There's various coaching programs, which many financial planners they have. If they have a wealth management unit, often will have financial planning that will gear for people that are maybe earlier in their career. So hopefully that touches a little bit with that, just a little dose of how the industry is evolving when it comes to getting help.
So before I go on to the next questions from the group, I want to ask a question that's a very basic question. I know my answer to the question and what my life is about, plus my wife's life is about. But where do you think and what do you think budgeting has to do with financial planning? In my mind, it's the first step towards planning. You have to know where your money's going so that you can budget. So I'm going to hit Diane with that one first.
Oh yes, budgeting is mega important. So many times people don't know where they spend their money. And if you don't know where it's going, you can't make any changes. My husband and I got married very young, 21, 22. And we bought our first house at 22 and 23. And I had we did have computers then, but I had a big paper thing, and I would keep track of where everything was spent because we were so tight on money. And then you can make decisions. And we started saving in our retirement accounts in our early 20s, maxed them out most of our lives. And again, if you know where you're spending, then you can make decisions. I had one couple, and this was a high-end couple I was working with. The sons would ask the husband for money, and he didn't know, and he would give it to them. And then they'd ask the mother for money. They were spending $6,000 a month on their boys that they didn't know about.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
So Betsy, you did reference budgeting when you were talking about your financial planning professor in college who got you angry. By the way, my money in college went to ramen noodles, pizza, subs, and beer and related items.
Yeah. So sometimes people think budgeting is about putting constraints on yourself. You're putting limits on yourself. And that's really not what budgeting is about. Budgeting is about putting money on the things that are important to you. And once you do that and you identify your priorities in your life, then a budget frees you to pursue those priorities, rather than just hoping that it all works out. So that's my 2 cents about budgeting. As soon as you have income, it's thinking about where it's going and how those dollars reflect your values and who you are.
All right, so I'm going to go now to Adam Zone. I got to take my glass. Adam Zeb from our
thank you.
audience to ask a question. I will butcher everybody's names. I apologize. I barely know my own kids' names. I can't speak to them, and English is my first language, and I'm challenged. So, Adam, what do you have?
Quite all right. Speaking of budgeting, I got my budgeting app right here out. But my question is pretty specific in regards to taking out qualifying distributions, dependent upon your condition for like what you have saved up. So currently I have about $25,000 saved up for college, and that's like in a designated money market fund right now. And then with that, I also have another $20,000 that are shoveled away into my Roth IRA account, right? So at what point would I take out, essentially, because you could take out like the basis, right? But then to withdraw qualifying contributions, like at what point would you actually stop pulling? Would you not want to pull out of that retirement account and instead take out loans? Or would you want to drain that retirement account, or not? I mean, just in terms of like the basis, perhaps, instead of taking out the penalty. Actually, it wouldn't be a penalty because it's a qualifying distribution for education, then it's okay. Anyways, I guess my question is, to avoid taking out debt, would you dig into a retirement account?
I'm going to let
Michael,
Arnie go. Since I skipped him on the last one.
All right. So, well, Adam, let me ask this this question for you, or from you. Let me ask where are you leading to, or in other words, how do you view the debt? Meaning, are you thinking, okay, I have these assets, I have money in the money market, I have money in my Roth, based on perhaps if I assuming it's invested, one option would be, okay, if I don't touch it, I could let it grow and compound over time. And what if I do take a loan? So in other words, and leave that money alone, but do take a loan, assuming that it's affordable, you can pay for it, and so at least you have your money that's left to compound. So in other words, think of the consideration. Plan A could be, okay, what if I take the money out, be debt free? One, from a numbers standpoint, of course, you could always do the numbers. Okay, what's the pros and cons there? But also, what's your mindset when it comes to that? Meaning, would that just relieve a lot of pressure of you? Maybe perhaps because you're investing yourself, you can make that up in terms of saving, squirreling money as soon as you have the job of your dreams and making a lot of money and putting that money that way. Or is a decision of, okay, I invested this money. I don't know how long you've invested it, but maybe perhaps if what's important to me is building liquidity. I'm keeping track of my debt. Maybe I'm still never positive. I know that debt because it's going to be, I'm assuming, student loans or just student loans. I know it's going to be eventually paid off. Do I let that money in the Roth ride and take advantage of the time I have and let that grow and compound? Those are the considerations in taking a look at that. I may be kind of striding the middle with that, but that's the first part there in terms of, okay, what are the options I have available to me, and what do I think is, what would make sense to me? Because keep in mind, even if you did take a loan, you always have the option to pull some of that basis or contributions out to help pay for that. So it's looking at it from that standpoint. I'm sure my colleagues would have their take as well.
I'm going to pass this one to Diane, and I'm going to say, Diane, what role also, you have what role does the status of the market have, as well as the interest rate environment have, in making a decision on whether or not to jump into taking a loan as opposed to dipping into savings, whether it be a retirement account or other savings, when you're balancing how to spend your money and you have a big expense like a school or even a car for that matter, or a mortgage.
Yeah, definitely. The first question I would be is, well, what's the interest rate on the loan? I went through this. We bought this house in November and we locked in a mortgage at 3%. Like 3%, I believe safely over time, I can get 5% on investments. So that's a 2% arbitrage for the next 30 years. I'll take that. But if the loan that you're looking at is 8%, maybe not. and it does also matter, like what Arnie said, your mindset. Often retirees will ask me, well, should I take out a loan on my mortgage or should I pay it off? And again, depending on where interest rates are and their comfort level, some people are okay with that. And some people are, no, I want to own my house free and clear. So there's a little bit of calculations and a little bit of checking your gut as to what is most comfortable for you.
I keep muting myself so that I don't interrupt with my coughing, that I seem to have a coughing fit when I get nervous. Betsy, do you want to chime in with anything on this area?
All of those are good points. And I would just throw out that in decisions like this, where the interest rate is close, the loan interest rate and the expected investment interest rate are pretty close. If you have the financial diligence to, let's say you take the loan, leave the money invested, but you pay it off, the outcome of that situation versus taking it out, avoiding the loan, but then investing more, an equivalent amount in like your Roth 401k, Roth IRA, in the first few years of working are probably not dramatically different. So sometimes we can get kind of wrapped around the axle of what works out to be potentially some fairly small differences. And so it kind of can come back to your comfort level. So does that answer your question? Can we follow up anything for you there, Adam?
Well, I mean, yeah, it seems to make a lot of sense, especially in comparing. Really, it comes down to a rate comparison of like, what does the current market look like, and how much will this compound across time in terms of, especially with like something as tricky as like a Roth contribution, where it's like you only get so many of those in your life, right? And you can only max out at 6K a year, right? So with that, like you're really having to pay attention to those rates in terms of really taking out that money. So I was really worried about like that's the main thing is like debt or touch the Roth, So I think that answered the question well.
So while we're on the topic of debt, before I get to the next question, is if somebody is starting out and they're thinking about managing their finances and planning out their finances, what are some of the things that you need to think about with regard to existing debt? What type of debt do you want to eliminate? And the basic financial planning, I think I know the answer to that. It's going to be the higher interest rate credit card loans and potentially student loans or other loans. But how does somebody make that balancing work for them in a generic sense? And Betsy, since you went last, you get to go first this time.
That's a great question. And it is one that has a deep divide in philosophies. Professor Miller said, highest interest rate, certainly if you have something in the 20s. And I saw a truck come across my desk. A service member had purchased a used vehicle at 28%. So yes, we are going to pay attention to those. However, if there are small debts that can be paid off fast in the hundreds of dollars, like a Banana Republic card or store credit cards, sometimes motivation is what matters most. And if you can knock those small debts off first, then it builds the habit and builds the motivation to get the debt paid off in the long run.
Arnie, you have anything to add on that one?
Yeah, yes, I sure will. In fact, the motivation part of it is a big key. As we mentioned, with the work that we have in the military, and that's not to say that service members are all in debt, but just given the amount of cases that we see, yes, we can model the interest rates, pay out the highest interest rates first. But oftentimes when we take a look at higher interest rates, it could be very well tied to a more larger balance. And a big part of it is that long-term behavior, meaning long-term enthusiasm of paying down debt. And so oftentimes as we run the numbers, sometimes we just need wins early on. And with the wins early on, we take out the smaller debt. In other words, it builds that mind muscle, if you will, on planning your expenses, paying off your debt. And keep in mind, it doesn't necessarily have to be that it's always a small. That could give you enough motivation where now you could go back and start tackling the higher debt and then work from there because you got some wins early on.
And Diane, while you're answering this question, what are your feelings with regard to the number of credit cards and or types of debts that somebody would be taking on? And a little bit about how important, when you're talking about debts, having debt is important to building up a credit score, which allows you, of course, to take on more debt. But how does that all relate to each other? And what are your feelings on a Banana Republic card, a Gap card, a Macy's card, having all of those credit cards in your pocket as opposed to one or two primary cards that you're going to use more frequently?
Well, I personally have one credit card for personal and one credit card for business to keep it simple. I don't want all those other cards. It's just complicates things. Shoot, what else did you ask?
I asked about the number of credit cards and then how credit impacts the credit score, what impact that has on your ability to manage your financial planning going forward.
Those credit bureaus drive me nuts. So I paid off my car and my credit score went down 30 points. I'm going, you're kidding me. So we didn't have a mortgage between selling the house in the Bay Area and coming here. So we didn't have a mortgage. I paid off the car. Oh my gosh, what a vagrant person I am. I just wanted to wring their necks. But yeah, having a car loan is very good for your credit apparently, and mortgages. But I wouldn't do it just for that. I think, having a credit card, and then eventually when you have a house, having a mortgage, that's all good. And if you can't get a car any other way, then, that will help your credit. But you just want to make sure to live within your means, live less than what you make. That is the key.
So I'm going to jump to Heidi. Heidi, I think you had your hand up and then you left and you came back. I'm glad you came back. Heidi, what's your question?
Hi, yeah, thank you so much. I'm back. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I don't know if that does you any good though.
Great. I hope to follow up with you after this panel, and I'm really excited to be here. Personal finance question and a personal anecdote. When I was a teen, I worked for a hospitality and beverage company in downtown San Francisco, where we went up to the stock trading floors and shined shoes. I personally shined Charles Schwab's shoes, but it did little for my financial planning future.
Not even a good tip.
Not a couple of bucks. So there are a ton of budgeting apps out there, none that have really clicked with me to sustain budgeting over a long period of time. So I'm just wondering what the panelists think about how to stay on track with a budget. And then my other question is, there's a lot of celebrity personal finance personalities out there that I like, and I'm just wondering, just to name drop, like Susie Orman, the gentleman in the South, he's on the radio, his name escapes my mind at the moment. And then I'm personally a fan of Warren Buffett. So if my interest is in value investing, is there a professional track through education, if that is the area I want to end up in finance? And I'll go offline here.
Arnie, I'm going to let you take that one first. I don't think you've gone first yet.
Okay, so it sounds like there's a couple questions. It sounds like the first one is I guess the motivation or the process to follow a budget or follow a spend plan. And also sounds like the second question is more of a career question regarding the financial part of it. But with the budgeting, well, I know each person has their favorite tools to work with, and so in other words, even in this day and age, I know apps are pretty popular. I may be a little bit old school. I like using pen and paper for a while until until I decided to, well, let me experiment with some of these apps. I'm actually on Mint to experiment with that, so that's helped me for that. Uh, I still encourage people, whether it's going to be an app, if that's not working, typically other alternatives could be as simple as a notebook. In other words, the idea of the budgeting, or I like to call them spend plans, is to track and monitor where your money goes into. Could be as simple as putting on a notebook, for example, the date, the day of the week, who you spent your money with, the particular dollar amount. And as you're reviewing over time, let's say, the 30 days, you'll get a sense, or you get a feel of, the cadence of your spending. In other words, do I spend highly on my days off or not? What does that look like in terms of the spending? So, pen and paper still fine. Also, if you are into spreadsheets, and I'm hoping that, given that potentially you want to be a finance major or into finance, Excel spreadsheets are kind of the tools of the trade. That could be a source as well. I think it be an opportunity to experiment with different formats and see what you're the most comfortable, the most motivated to do, and then stick with that in terms of 30 days, 60 days, and see if you can do that over time.
So over the course of saying that you do it in paper, I don't know how many people can see this, but this is the Big Book of Money, Michael and Michelle's Big Book of Money. This is our budgeting book that we started when we moved in together in 1993. And we had our monthly spreadsheets, and we just keep that as a souvenir, even though most of our stuff now is done electronically. But we had the Big Book of Money, and that is about 3 inches thick of a loose leaf. So when you talk about that, and that's, granted, it was 1993, and it wasn't nearly as automated as it could be, even though Excel did exist at that point. But there are Excel spreadsheets from every month from 1993 till, I don't know, when we stopped using the Big Book of Money. Betsy, would you like to chime in on some of the things that were brought up?
Yes, absolutely. So I actually just saw in the chat field Adam's comment, and I agree with him very much that when folks have trouble sticking with a budget, there are fancy tools and apps, but there is a lot of value in reconciling your spending with yourself. And when you do it on pen and paper, or you do it in an Excel file, and at the end of the month you go back, or maybe you do it every week, or however often you do it, like, feeling those transactions is a good part of building financial diligence and financial conscientiousness as you move through life. Similar to the Big Book of Money, I had a client come to me with, and they sent me their Excel file that had every budget, projected and actual, for the last 18 years. So it was no mistake that when they came to me, they had $1 million in the bank, not in the bank exactly, but $1 million in their coffers before they were 40. They'd been incredibly diligent for all those years.
So just so you know, that Big Book of Money, when it was originally created, should have been a Big Book of No Money. So we were budgeting when we had no money. I moved to California with no job and $115,000 of student loan debt from law school. And my wife was the breadwinner at the time. But her retirement plan seemed to have worked out much quicker than my retirement plan. I don't know how that worked. Diane, you want to chime in on anything like that on this topic?
I love spreadsheets. I've tried various apps. With Mint, of course, you don't pay for it. So if you're not paying for it, you are the product, and they sell your information. So not a big fan of that. But yeah, I love spreadsheets.
So as we're talking about some of the tools that are out there, I have a 26-year-old son, right? 26, 98. Yeah, 26, 96. So 26-year-old son. And somehow or other, he got the savings gene, but he uses things like Acorns and other tools where when he spends some money on something, pennies go into that account and it builds up, or dollars go into that account, or he has a regular monthly withdrawal from his checking account where his paycheck goes, that goes directly into his investment account. What do you guys think of the various tools that are out there, like Acorns and some of the other ones that are out there that help people with savings? I'm going to go with Betsy this time.
Of course. I mean, some of those tools out there are fine. They're good. They're no stand-in for a well-drafted plan, though. They're kind of an after dinner mint, maybe, to the solid saving and investing plan that should be in place from the very beginning. But those roundup type tools certainly can be useful.
Diane?
I am not familiar with those tools.
Okay. Arnie, anything?
Yeah, I see those quite a bit. Yeah, definitely to echo Betsy, is it goes back to, what are you trying to achieve? What's your goal? What's your game plan? In other words, a financial goal is something that needs time, money to achieve. And as I said, now there are certain accounts that will help with that, like bank accounts and savings accounts. Just on a quick side note, before there was your Robin Hoods, before there was Acorns, I think back in, I want to say either college or early post-college, when I wanted to buy shares, once again, I didn't have a big account. Schwab wasn't big back then, but when I wanted to buy some stocks, I actually had to contact the company. In this case, I think I had some Johnson & Johnson, literally mail in a check via US mail, and they somehow get it, and I buy my shares. Now you can do that online. I think it goes back to, while it may not necessarily move the needle, it goes back to establishing those habits and getting the awareness piece of it. In other words, if I get excited about my fractional share of Tesla, if I get excited about my fractional shares of XYZ, the question becomes, okay, that could be my, as I how it was mentioned, it's my dinner mint. Okay, maybe that leads my interest to the bigger picture in terms of savings, investment accounts, Roth IRA accounts, and so forth. So while it helps in terms of some of the roundups, I often encourage to use it as definitely either the dinner mint after you take care of the big stuff, or kind of the appetizer to get you set up for the bigger stuff.
So, one of the things I want to ask about, I've done this in my business law class almost every semester, and those of you in my business law class will, if I haven't asked it yet, I will be asking it in the next week, because we're going to start to cover some banking issues. But what do you think about balancing your bank statements? I would say checkbooks, but a lot of people don't have checkbooks or checking accounts anymore, but they do have their debit cards that they're using on a regular basis. How important is it for somebody to review those statements? Diane?
I guess the bank statements, I do everything online now. And so I see everything that goes through. And I do check our credit cards every month, because I swear for a while there was once a quarter, our credit card would get hacked somehow. I don't know what was going on. So I always check all those statements just to make sure everything is copacetic. Especially my husband got his identity stolen in 2014, and that was a disaster.
Worked out well for me, though. Oh, sorry. Did I say that out loud?
Yeah, we were at Wells Fargo, not to name names, and somebody's hacked. My husband's stuff is out there, so he's hackable at all times. And they kept going in and taking money straight out of our bank account, and then they were trying to open all these things. So I do recommend you always check all your statements every time.
And along those same lines, I also have a 23-year-old son, and about 2 years ago, his account information somehow got out into the wild, and he went 3 months without looking at his accounts, even online. Not that he ever writes a check or balances the checks, but there was several $100s. They did a quick and dirty 1 month, a simple, couple of dollars. And when they realized they got away with a couple of dollars, they came back the next month and did a much larger withdrawal or purchase using his account information. And lucky for him, my wife and I have been banking with our bank for a really long time. And I think that had a little bit of an impetus on the bank to make sure that even though he was beyond the date, the 30 days he has to reconcile and challenge his bank statements, because of us, he was able to get that period extended, and we got really good customer service from Citibank. And Diane, how did you figure out it wasn't Wells Fargo themselves that was opening up accounts? Because that's what they got in trouble for. They were
Right.
opening up accounts on their own for people without any rhyme or reason.
Oh my goodness.
Betsy, do you have anything to say with regard to tracking accounts and managing accounts and just watching where the money goes?
Absolutely. I mean, you should be logging in and looking at your accounts at least every month, if not more frequently. When the hackers get in, they get in fast and they can do a lot of damage. My husband jokes that he can't buy anything. He can't buy me a birthday present because I'm checking the accounts so often. I'm like, what did you buy at? But you know, that's the certainty we have that we're tracking what things are, and I recommend it.
So Jeffrey, I see you have your hand up. You have a question.
Scott Home. Michael, it's good to see you. I had your business law class at 2020 right after the pandemic hit. We were in class and then we had to go online, and I had a great time in that class.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. You're probably one of the few then.
No, you did a great job transitioning. This question is for everybody, but especially Diane, because she mentioned that she got in right in 87, right before the crash of 87.
Yeah.
And so she's seen quite a few up and downs in the market. Obviously, we're going through one right now. Anybody who's been paying attention would see the last week or two, the last 2 years, I guess you could say. Diane and everybody for that matter, would you guys change your strategy? Would you change your plan at all? Would you get out of a more growth oriented plan and get into a safer plan, maybe a more kind of inflation proof plan? Or if you're long term invested, would you kind of just tune out all the noise and stick with your long term program? Sorry about all the noise, guys, by the way. I just got home.
Well, your question is about all the noise, so that works out well. Diane.
That's a great question. A lot of it, if you have a plan and your investments are attuned to that plan, then you don't want to make hasty decisions. If you think that you can time the market, there's always somebody that can time the market this time, but they can't next time. And so you want to stay the course. So I tell my clients, if you don't have 3 years to invest, let's not put it in the stock market. And that rule of thumb for me came from, if somebody started with me at the peak before the financial crisis and invested, in 3 years, they would be back to where they started. So that's where I use that 3-year rule of thumb. And like came back to work in 2004 or 5 because I had to save money for my kids' college. So the money for my kids' college was invested more conservatively than for my retirement, because they were 10 years away, and at that time I was 25 years away. So you do want to invest the money properly for its intended target. So for instance, buying a home, if you're going to buy a home in 2 years, you don't want to put that in the stock market. You can put it in the bank. I used an online bank because at least you get 0.5 instead of 0.01. But yeah, if it's long-term money, just tune out the noise.
And then Arnie.
So to add to that with what Diane mentioned, definitely, I think if you heard through the theme, a big part of it is goals, planning, and if those haven't changed, then then your investment strategy should be as part of the plan as well. That's the tactic of the plan. So if nothing of that range in terms of your time frame for your goal, what you're trying to achieve, it's it's stay the course as you may hear, or even better yet, even consider, if you think of I think stocks are one of those things where in other words, if my cans of tuna went down in price and I enjoy tuna, I'll probably buy more of them, or let's call it spam. That's there. With the stocks, pretty much since they are ownerships of future profits and losses, I kind of feel that, man, these things are on the cheap. I'll go ahead and buy that. But just overall too, when it comes to the stocks, just given, when you take a look at the companies that are out there and the people that work for them, ultimately that's what you're investing in. So I have some level of I don't know, want to call it confidence, but some level that the people that work for these companies, from the CEOs all the way to the people that do all the day-to-day work, they still have to show up to work even though those stock prices are down. Ingenuity is still there. Companies, technologies are changing, ideas are changing. I think that as those types of companies maybe start out and become bigger and go public, they're always going to be there. So over time, I would say, investing in human ingenuity through public stocks is a good thing overall, but based on your goals and your timeframes, as Diane had mentioned.
One of the things that my 26-year-old has done, and he's done very well, aside from the Apple stock we got him when he graduated college, is he likes to buy stocks of companies that he knows. And what he really made some money on was right when the pandemic hit, he invested in Zoom. He knew about Zoom. His company was using Zoom, and he knew about Zoom, and he looked into it, and he decided, I'm going to buy 5 shares of Zoom. 5 shares, that's all he did. And we have, because we had bought him stock when he graduated from college several years earlier. He had an account that he opened through Schwab or E-Trade. I forgot who it was. So I just want to know what you guys think about if somebody's got, a few $100s that they want to invest in the stock market. What do you think of the idea of actually investing in a company you know about and feel really good about? Obviously, Zoom was, the ingenuity factor was definitely there with Zoom, as Arnie referenced. But what do you think of that idea, Betsy?
Yeah, Zoom was a good choice, but in all honesty, I would recommend to generally avoid individual stocks. It's just really hard to reach a level of diversification that is meaningful, unless you're working with huge sums of money. And so low cost, broadly diversified funds or ETFs, ETFs give access to really diversified investments at low cost, even better than some mutual funds that have some high minimums sometimes. So
can you tell everybody what you mean by ETF?
Yeah, so an exchange traded fund is similar to a mutual fund, but mutual funds are traded at or priced at the end of the day. And so you get one price per day, and that's when shares are transacted. Whereas an exchange traded fund is traded as when the market is open. And so sometimes with mutual funds, like if you were to go to Vanguard, an excellent low cost trading or company, you have to start with 3,000. But if you don't have 3,000, you only have a few hundred, you can get an exchange traded fund, get the value of the diversification, but at a price you can afford.
So it's like a closed, when I was in graduated college in 1986, I went to work for Alliance Capital, and we had closed-end mutual funds that were traded as if they were stocks. It's similar to that type of situation for an ETF. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. All right, we have a question from Maya Cornin. Maya, you want to chime in?
Yes, so I guess this is a bit more of an open question, but a little bit back to what Betsy said earlier about, having savings at a really young age. A little bit like backstory real quick is I'm 20 years old, and I had about $40,000 in saving from my startup company that I started last year. And basically I got in an accident and had to use, I got, about a $200,000 hospital bill that I have to now pay. What would you kind of recommend in terms of getting back out of these very large sums of debt and going back to investing in the future? Would you maybe say like go and try and take a more aggressive approach to get back up to where that was? Or do you think it's best to take a slower route and maybe invest into a financial advisor for this best route over a longer period of time?
Great.
Diane, I'm going to leave that one for you.
So you said you have $200,000 of a hospital bill you have to pay?
So yeah, right now I'm at about $90,000 left I have to pay. I basically emptied out my entire savings, which for a 20-year-old, I felt like I was doing pretty good. But now I'm at a halt because I'm at this point where I can't work, I can't collect the benefits, and a lot is going to be based on disability for a while until I heal. So I'm kind of at this point of debt with no income.
Right. Not something that I've dealt with before. Did you, I feel kind of weird giving personal advice in this public forum. I'm a little uncomfortable with that.
No,
And
I think that's fair. I think it's hard to answer from a personal, to provide personal advice. And I think it's, in this forum, it's hard to dig into the level of detail you need to give that type of personal advice. So Maya, I'm going to change your question around a little bit.
yeah,
And I don't mean to poo-poo the situation. It's obviously a very serious situation, put you in a financial hardship. But from the standpoint of one of the things that when we did this a couple of years ago, I had this question written, and it still holds water today. Health costs have such a huge impact on financial health. So how does somebody plan, if they can, for their costs that are associated with that? And do you guys think that the elimination of private health insurance, such as something like Medicare for All, or from even those that a program such as Medicare for those that want it, would impact on financial planning today? And whether it's such a change would take place, or when such a change would take place? Personally, Congress is doing nothing. So the answer to the second half of that is it's not going to happen. Doesn't matter who's in control, whether they have both houses and the presidency and the Supreme Court, it just isn't going to happen because they do nothing there. Sorry for that political thing, but how does somebody go about managing their health costs and preparing for situations such as Maya described? And how does health costs come into a financial plan? I'm going to give that one to Arnie.
Oh,
Sorry,
yes,
Diane, I didn't let you finish, even though you backed out of the other one smartly, though, I would add.
oh, okay. Oh, so for the healthcare, yeah, certainly in context, I don't know if I want to date myself, but in terms of like, for example, early on in my career, healthcare costs while they're there, especially working for a particular company, it wasn't really necessarily on the radar. Fast forward today, in terms of, I think you mentioned in terms of layering it, is I think the average, just generally speaking, the average budget, healthcare now is probably, if not the top number one, top two, especially with healthcare premiums. So the decision on there, so like any type of health insurance, the question now becomes, okay, if I have a situation where I do get hurt, or do get hurt and have these hospital bills, but before I'm, in terms of hedging that, what are the sources that are available to me? So for example, in Cover California, or under the Affordable Care Act, if one is under the age of 26, one option, if that's available, to piggyback off of a parent's plan. The second part of it could be perhaps Cover California as well, and applying for that, whether or not you do have coverage, or whether or not you don't. A lot of it is driven from premiums based on your income. That's one choice, and also working for companies that are there. Just from an anecdotal, from what I've seen on the military side, some decision-making tree is with regards to their military career. I've seen people, while they don't want to necessarily be in active duty, because they've seen healthcare costs either through companies or through the marketplace under the Affordable Care Act, they have a sense that healthcare premiums are increasing. And in some of those cases, folks are deciding to have more closer to a 20-year career. So that way they're going to use some of the benefits or medical benefits that are afforded to military retirees because of the potential expenses that are going into going in the future. But a big part of it also is, okay, how does this system work? Recently, I ran into a case where a person did lose their position, was covered by a very large HMO, actually contacted HMO and said, here's the situation. It looks like I need to go into Medi-Cal, through Cover California. Can I still be covered under that same plan? And actually what we discovered was they can. There's a system that we had to go through but that was available. I apologize for being a little bit more long-winded on that. It's just going back in terms of, okay, insurance is important. Now, what type of avenues can I have? And the sources certainly could be, I think Cover California would be START as a way to take a look at that. Also healthcare.gov at the federal level if you're looking for systems or ways to insure.
So Diane, I'll let you get back into the fray here. As far as how does healthcare costs, health insurance, and things like that fit into a financial plan? Does it, and how important is that for the long-term financial health of the person who's having a health plan? Yes, Diane.
Yeah, it's.
I don't know if you were shooting yourself or you're saying, who, me?
Super, super important. So I've been a financial planner, a CFP for 30 years now. And it's amazing how things have changed over time. We used to clump everything together, what you needed to spend in retirement. And I'm not sure exactly when we started busting out healthcare as a separate goal. I'm going to guess 8-10 years ago, we separated out as a separate goal because medical inflation is twice the rate of average inflation. And when I started doing that with all my clients in their financial plans started blowing up. So, all we can do in a plan is make the best assumptions we can with the information we have. And then that's why I review every year, at least with all my clients, because something changes. The market outperforms, the market underperforms, tax laws change, healthcare changes, you lose jobs, you get a job, it's always something changing. But yeah, it was super interesting when that started happening and watching people's plans blow up. It's like, okay, we've got some more work to do here.
So the health insurance and the cost of long-term care and things like that have a significant impact on your financial plan is what I'm hearing. Okay. I want to thank the three of you for joining us today and granting us the time with you. I will say to everybody who's here, we did go a little bit over. I will say to everybody that's here, you do need a financial plan. I don't think anybody's going to doubt that. I think everybody needs to budget. I think our three panelists today made that very clear, is you need to know where your money is going. What are you spending your money on? One of the things that we talked about a couple of years ago was, do you really need to spend $4.75 on that mocha latte, half decaf with a triple shot of espresso Starbucks coffee every morning? Especially since you don't go to Starbucks and get just the coffee, you end up getting a muffin or a bagel or something else from Starbucks. Where can you start? And you got to start. That's the big message, I think, that all three of these panelists were talking about from the very beginning. I want to thank them for joining us. I'm going to send it back to Miriam, who I just got to note is now the host of the meeting. So Miriam's going to have a few announcements, but I want to thank everybody for joining us today.
Thank you, Michael. I want to thank Diane, Betsy, and Arnie. Thank you very much for being part of our panel today. It was really productive and informative discussion. We appreciate your volunteering your time. If you feel comfortable, you can put your contact information in the chat for students if they want to reach out to you and maybe work with you. And I just want to let people know who are still on this call that our next event is a GROW event. Get ready for opportunities at work on 5/5. We're going to talk about virtual interviewing, how to put your best face forward in a virtual interview. And then on 5/12, we wrap up the semester with the Business Beyond the Classroom. We're going to be debuting a new Harness platform, which is a platform for entrepreneurship and innovators. So 2 more opportunities to participate in events this semester. And with that, I'm going to conclude this and thank you everybody for attending. Again, reach out to me or Professor Miller if you'd like a recording of the event. And thank you again, Diane, Arnie, and Betsy. Really appreciate it.